and was the crazy part, but I swear to you, dude, you could have grabbed yourself a four-wheeler, hopped on that four-wheeler, and there was never one time that you would have had to get off of that four-wheeler to get around. He literally walked through those woods somehow, some way that a four-wheeler, I'm telling you, there was nothing was ever smaller than like 4 feet.
Oh my God.
Like it was the craziest thing because you look through the woods, you know what I mean? And there's no way, like if you were doing it on your own, you'd be like, there's no way you could drive a four-wheeler through here.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, and I know I sound nuts right now, but I swear to you, there was not one time in those 2 miles that a four-wheeler could not have just followed behind him. Like that's
Could only imagine what he had on his head.
Yeah.
He could have been 35 inches
It
wide.
was just one of those ones. And back in that day, those kind of bucks were up there, like Glenn knows.
Yeah.
I mean,
Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails Podcast. I'm sitting down here at Huntstock, Wildwood Farms, and I'm sitting down here with
Glenn Bombardier.
Timmy Bolduc.
Timmy Bolduc.
Connor Shalong.
That's right. All right. Well, we got some serious deer hunters sitting here right now for this podcast. I kind of wanted to do an episode about bucks that got away. I thought that'd be kind of something new.
You guys probably got a few of them, huh?
Couple too many.
Couple too many.
Yeah.
Do you have some like bucks that like really come to mind that like you wake up in a cold sweat at 2 a.m. and think about?
I've got several, but one in particular that comes to mind is in the Adirondacks. This was probably a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. I was going along and I hadn't seen a single track basically all day, and then all of a sudden on this spine of this ridge, a doe pops out and she's running like hell.
Yep.
And it was maybe 100 yards away. I'm like, obviously I didn't jump her. And then all of a sudden this huge, I mean, it's not as big as yours on the wall there, but it was gigantic. I mean, huge, long, like looked like 12, 15-inch tines.
Wow.
And he's running like hell right after her and nose to the ground, just, you know how they run.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I was trying to pick a shot, and boom, over the other side of that little spine ridge, and I got on them and tracked them and they never stopped running for like 3 miles. And I got my father on the phone, and he was he was down a little further, and was getting just further and further and further away from the truck. So I was getting a little concerned. I had that in the back of my mind, and this is actually kind of embarrassing story. I'm not sure if I should even tell it, but anyway, I'll keep going. The deer keeps going north, and I keep on it. And I cross the track, or I cross the road, another road that I had never been on.
Yep.
And so it was the main road, pavement, cross that road and get on the other side, and once again go about another mile. And all of a sudden I see that doe that he was dogging, and she's got her tongue hanging out, and I'm like, he's got to be here someplace. Flash of brown, and there he goes right after her again, and I never got a shot. Anyway, come over, long story short, I come over the top of this knoll, and there's a different doe standing right there, looking right at me at 10 yards. And I was like, oh, I slammed on the brakes.
Yep.
And I've got 760 pump.
Yep.
And I'm looking, and I got the peep. And there he is right there, like 70 yards, staring straight at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it on. It's one of those that have a little too big of a peep sight.
Okay.
And this is where the first embarrassing portion is. Yeah.
The bead
But yeah,
is
I'm
big?
sorry.
The
The
bead is-
bead's a little too wide.
Okay.
And so it covered the whole deer
Wow.
at 70 yards. And
Yep.
just because he was also standing straight at me. And the doe that was 10 yards away starts stomping her foot.
Yep.
And I'm basically going to shoot right over the top of her. Anyway, so I'm like, all right, let me pick my spot. And boom. And he didn't even move. I jacked another shell, and that he took off, and I fired another time, totally missed him all 3 times.
Dang.
God, it's brutal. That one just kills me. But when he's standing there,
Yeah.
those tines, it was a 10-pointer.
Oh.
And those tines had to be, like I said, 12, 15 inches. And it was wide, high. Makes me want to cry.
What do you run out of daylight?
Yeah, well, that's the other embarrassing thing where I was telling you my father was on the other side. I kept on having that thing in my mind, and that was 3:30 that I shot it. And I'm like, I've got to get back. I don't want to leave him in the dark. I followed the deer for probably another half an hour and said, I'm giving up on it. And I shoot myself. I want to, I'm just slapping myself right now even.
Yeah.
Why did I give up on that deer? I had at least 45 more minutes that I could have caught up to it because he was still with the doe. I'm like,
Right.
why did I not do that? But I had that in the back of my mind that I still had to go and get my father. And it was a long walk.
I think everyone does that at some point.
Oh my gosh.
tracking.
Yeah.
I've given up before way too soon.
I have so many. I could tell you that it's like I wish that I just would have kept going till dark, or even tracks that I wasn't like super thrilled about that I took a long ways, and then I was like, oh, I can go get on another one.
Yeah.
And I should have just stayed on that deer.
Exactly.
I was so invested with the miles and the time that I'd put on. It's like I should have just kept going, but you learn, I guess.
You do, and I won't have to make that mistake again for sure. And like I said, it's embarrassing.
No, I mean that's really not that bad.
Yeah, well, I had to walk a shame for like 5 miles to get back to the truck.
I'm sure you're thinking about that the whole way out.
Oh my god! Slapping
You know what
myself.
I did when I back in the very beginning, and no one ever said to do it or anything, but I remember when I first got my 760, I picked it up and I noticed that the front beads were really heavy on those things, and I never liked that. But it was just a year or two into it. I don't even know if it was a year into it, but I just immediately, when I got that gun, I snapped it up and I was like, man, that bead is heavy. And I took a file, the post comes up, and I took a file and I started right on one side and I just filed right up and around and go back and forth, and I shrunk my bead right down to nice and fine. And I've had it that way forever, but that was a really good trick. And I didn't know I was doing something like, hey, that's
Something
a really
cool.
good, you know what I mean? I didn't know, but
I've never heard anybody do that before, so it's a good little tip.
Do you put any color on the end of it or
Well,
anything?
that was what I was going to say too, because this was one of those things. I've been hunting with a 270 7600 for years, like since '98, and this was the first year that I got the 30-06 pump. It was actually a conversion from an automatic. Had it converted to a pump, and I left that big bead on there, and that was the first time I ever really hunted with it and tracked with it, and I just didn't register there,
Right.
So uncomfortability with a rifle that I haven't used. I mean, there was so many factors to that embarrassment, but
That you took away, because that was my next question. Like, what do you think? Like, what are the big things that you took away from that?
that one I took the thing that I put that gun in the safe because I'm like, I'm just going to use my 270 from now on. But
Yeah, do you get mad at guns too?
I did.
I did.
Won't
I get
touch
mad.
it again.
he just got rid of the gun.
Yeah.
but I put a red dot on it this year.
Oh,
And I'm
cool.
going to try that because the red dot you can carry it just like a peep gun. So
I've heard Brad talk about
yeah,
that.
those,
on the-
it's
Red
exactly.
dots are getting popular.
they
huh?
are,
Yeah.
yeah. It would be cool. The only
I can
thing
see it being pretty effective.
The only thing I would worry about is the battery thing. 'Cause I know,
Yeah.
like turkey hunting with a red dot, sometimes you hear the horror stories of the battery running out or whatever, and you got to work in a bird, and you're kind of screwed if the battery goes out on
Yeah.
the peep. It's kind of
I talked to Brad
foolproof.
about it for a long time, and he swears by it that it's one battery a year. That's
Really?
it. Yep. And he keeps another one in his front pocket. I'll do the same thing, but
I'm with you. I'm nervous about the
I'm
battery.
nervous.
Like I'd have to live through that to learn to trust that.
yeah.
And
And
I
then
think moisture could still screw up the glass on those too.
Yeah.
oh, see that's what I was just gonna say too. It's glass, right?
yep.
I'm real hard on shit. I'm real. I'm scared about it. But you know what? It probably would be good if I gave it the chance. It's just, one of those things, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I guess we're going to find out in another year because it seems like there's a lot of people that are
run.
they're going to run them this year.
Yeah.
I think next year we'll know a lot more.
Yeah, get some feedback from
Yeah,
them all.
get some feedback. Yeah.
They definitely look really sweet on the lever guns. I've seen them on like the old, like the 4570s where they got the red dot. They look really cool on those.
Yeah.
I haven't even really seen one on a 7600 or 760.
Oh, they look pretty cool.
Do they look cool on there
yeah,
too?
You take those old Weaver mounts that they have, the 2-piece,
Okay.
and you put just one of them on,
Yep.
and fits perfectly.
Pretty sleek.
Yep.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
You can hardly even see the undermount, and it just fits perfectly right in your hand. And
So when you lay your head on a stock, do you think it's like you're kind of down, almost like you'd be shooting a peep, or is it up a little bit like a scope?
no, exactly like a peep.
So it's down like a peep.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
And I've tried. I mean, I've tried. Moving my head over to the side, canning one way or the other, and and that red dot just stays on whatever you're looking at. So
Right.
it could be on the way right.
It doesn't matter where it
of the
is.
glass,
Yeah.
and it'll hit there.
Right.
Whereas a peep, you're going to have it centered, don't you?
You have to have it
Yeah, it
lined
takes
up.
that little.
Right, a little bit of wiggle room out of it.
Yep, exactly.
You don't use a peep?
I don't know. I've been using the scope for years now.
Have you?
I've tried a peep, but I just can't get too proficient with it, it seems
Yeah.
like.
It's funny doing the Woodman Arms and stuff. We sell them, and people like we've had guys, a lot of guys actually that, I want to try it with a peep, because we offer it with a peep, and it's the oddest thing. It's like you either get along with it or you don't.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's almost half the population that just can't use them, and then the other half are like, what are you talking about? It's fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like you
Right.
either can or you can't.
I think it's a confidence thing, a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I like the Woodman peep better than I like any other peep.
I was just going to say the fiber optic's a lot smaller on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The
that's-
fiber
that's that
and
fine point.
Yep.
the
Yeah, I do
way
like that.
the way it sits on top of the, I don't know what you even call that part of the gun. What's that called?
Receiver.
Like the receiver?
Yeah, the top
Like
of the frame,
The
yeah.
way it sits, I feel like, is a little more efficient for me to get
Yeah.
into it.
And just to be that fiber optic being small goes right back to me filing my bead
Yep.
because I put
right.
I put the fiber optic in when you burn those with a lighter to create the ball so that stays in there. If you burn too much, you can make a big heavy ball, dude. I make them as small and tight as I can.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do you carry your placements with you when you're out there? Or do you
Nope.
just
I
gamble
haven't
with it?
broke one yet. I've
Okay.
had guys that have broke one, but I haven't personally broke one.
Yep.
I think down the road, I'm not so sure fiber optic in a front bead for a buck tracker like what we all do. I'm not so sure that's the best thing anyways. It really probably should be like a 760 front bead, but made to the size. You know what I mean? Something that's steel, or it would have to be steel, not aluminum, but that would be a better option,
Yeah.
But then you get into half the guys that own them are like, well, what are you talking about? I really love the fiber optic. And then the other half would be like,
They wanted the bead.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just do both. Maybe down the road.
Yeah.
No, I love the
In our
fiber
spare
optic.
Options,
time.
I guess. You're
Yeah.
right.
In your spare time.
Yeah.
You guys are cranking, huh? Dude?
Yeah, we're busy. We're still way behind. Problem is we sell them faster than we can make them. But
I hear ya.
Mark, as we're getting further into this company and stuff, we're getting more efficient at doing things. And like back in the day, when we first started, we'd make, if you were making a part, let's just call it the receiver, we would make, say, 200 of them. Nowadays, we make 750 of them. If we run barrels, back in the day, it was 100. Now we run 500 at a time. So what's really cool is since we've done that, now, we have parts at the end when it comes time to assemble. I have those longer because, when you're running these machines and stuff, like you'll shut down a machine that say is making your peep sights, but that same machine might make a different part of your gun. So if it's running peep sights, but you need, say, a trigger guard, you see what I mean? It's a process to get the machine swapped back over to make a trigger guard.
Right, it all takes time.
Yeah,
switching
you
stuff.
got to take out, clamps that hold the parts and all that stuff. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So now, like I said, instead of having that machine run those parts in 2 days, we might run it for 4 days and make double the amount. And that's really helped out. And then Mark also is, he's been buying a lot of new machines. So
Oh, cool.
we have machines that turn down the barrels because we buy them in blanks and they're big and they're heavy. It's 1 3/4 inches across the barrel. Well, you got to shave all that metal down off there. We had a machine that would do that, but that same machine would run a different part for a different. It's a machine shop too, so there's these little laser parts, and that machine has to spend a lot of time running those parts. But now he bought another one of the machines, so now you can run the laser parts and then run barrels
kidding.
over here.
That's sweet.
It's a lot of money. You're
Right.
investing $250,000 into this machine to do that, but it does obviously ramp up production. So
And you guys are growing like crazy too, by the sounds.
yeah, so it's kind of cool now because it's so much different than it used to be. But because of those moves that Mark is doing, I'm seeing now that production is definitely going up. It's certainly not where it needs to be, but
Now, how many guys are working there?
that's one of the bigger problems. We could probably use, pick it, I don't know, 20, but it's like a 7-man crew.
Yep.
You know,
Right.
there's 7 of us that pretty much run this thing, and it's
Dang,
just
it's a lot of work for 7
yeah,
guys.
it's an animal.
Wicked.
Yeah.
But it's cool,
Wicked.
you know. It's like a framing crew, you know. You can hire 5 guys to be your helpers on framers, but you'll get that one guy that just knows it. Like, yeah, he's going to be putting in windows in a minute, and I need window jacks. You don't even have to tell him to go cut me window jacks. He just looks right ahead, does it for you. Those kind of people are like almost workers and a half in a way. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They
right.
just know what's up. I feel like, you know, Mark is certainly that way. I like to think I'm that way. I don't know. But, you know, I feel like the people we have, we get a lot done for the crew that we have, you know.
Pretty efficient for
Five-
a number of guys.
Five good men can accomplish more than 20. like,
Exactly.
shitty men.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. Definitely. Yeah, are you guys? You're pretty nationwide now, aren't you?
Yeah, we ship all over. I mean, we're still pretty much, I'd say 85 to 90% is probably up here in the Northeast, but
Is it?
we certainly get orders like we ship our share to like Michigan, Minnesota. I've shipped to New Mexico,
Oh, wow.
Texas, stuff like that.
Word's
Yeah.
getting out there.
You know what's funny is I think the big boom of them hasn't even happened yet.
Really?
I really do. I truly think when the Midwestern guys and
Totally agree.
when they really figure out the product and they get to see it and stuff,
Yep.
it's going to be like, you guys are going to have like warehouses and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, the most efficient muzzleloader I've seen.
It's funny. I tell people I think it's the nicest gun I own.
Yeah. I'd rather carry that gun than any gun I
It's
own.
the nicest
Yeah.
gun I own. You know,
Yeah.
the way it's built and it handles and everything. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's a sweet gun.
I used to love my pump gun, and I thought that I would argue that that's the best carrying gun ever. But I never realized, like, you know, on your pump gun, if you look at anybody that runs one, you look and, you know, when you hold the gun to the side with your magazine in, it's the heaviest, fattest part of the gun, right?
Yeah.
But you look at everybody's gun, and they'll be half worn on the front part of their magazine and
Yep.
then on the tubes, right? Because you want to carry on the tubes because it's thin.
Yep.
But the problem with that, and I never realized it until I carried the Woodman, the thin part of that gun puts the gun so far out of balance.
Yep.
That's why everybody carries half on their receiver
Yep.
and half on there. And it's only because if you don't, the muzzle points up all the time and you're fighting to keep it down.
Yep.
That's what Mark nailed on that gun. And I just never realized how important it was. But if you look at a Woodman, there's a slim down spot to carry that gun.
Yep.
I can take that gun and balance it with 2 fingers. It's so the carry point is exactly the dead center balance of the gun. And I never realized, like, that just makes carrying a gun 1,000 times easier.
Yep.
And like I said, I've been doing it with my pump forever, thinking this is great.
Yeah.
Then I did that, and I'm like, oh, I don't really like my pump anymore.
Right, you
Yeah,
go back
I know.
to the
Yeah.
pump, it feels
I
way
know.
bulky.
Yeah,
and
if you
whatnot.
if you were like, hey Timmy, you got to walk 20 miles and carry a gun, I'm picking my Woodman
yeah.
every time.
for sure. Especially with the peep.
Yeah,
It weighs like a pound.
yeah.
I don't know what it weighs, but it feels like it weighs a pound.
Yeah.
It's not much.
So Mark was pretty smart with that, and I know it was intentional, but he, like I said, it showed me that that matters where your carry balance point. They
yeah.
better
Yes.
meet together in the right spot, you know.
He
So-
seems like a really smart guy.
Oh man,
He has to be to have come up with a lot of this stuff.
unbelievable. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's funny. He's one of those dudes. I always laugh, you know, because it seems like there's some people that are like really, really smart, like with say just book smart kind of people. But
Yeah,
then in
yeah.
life, like, you know, they'll go out to check their mail and like won't even look both ways. And the
Yeah,
car
right.
screech, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
God. But then like there's other people that are like really street smart, and you can give them $10 and they'll turn it into $1 million in 3 years. But they have a high school education, or
Exactly.
maybe right.
Not even.
Right.
Not even.
But then
yeah.
every now and again, you meet the people that are like both. I've
Yeah.
only met a handful. Mark is one of those.
Yeah.
He's like really smart like we are.
Yeah.
But then he's also really smart like,
Like he can read a
On
book.
the
in
other
a
oh
side of
day.
man.
things.
And the crazy part is that kid has a high school education. Like everything he's learned has been self-taught.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
Yeah. So like running machines and programming and all the things, like I never realized what goes into programming a machine to make a part. But dude, I'll tell you, I would have to make a video and watch it 40 times to ever get
Oh,
that.
me
You know what I
too.
mean?
I bet.
Mark can just like bam, 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 go through there, hit a bunch of buttons, and it's cracking out trigger guards. Like, holy smokes, dude.
And that has to be so precise too. On
And I
that
mean-
stuff.
Everything is
mean,
crazy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You know? But it's just, he's just one of those guys. It's the oddest thing, but he is. He's just one of those guys. He's smart in life, but he's also smart in everything he touches. He's
Yep.
just one of those guys. So it works out good for us, you know? And we've always said it works out good too, because then the other thing that he has is he's just type A. He's one of those dudes that like, it's got to be right. It's not going unless it's right. And I'm the same way. So And
No half-assing.
Yeah, there's no half-ass. Like, dude, if it ain't right, if I'm building your gun and it's not right, you're not getting it. Like, it's going to be absolutely perfect, you know? And Mark is that way in his side of it because I do all the assembly stuff, and I'm the last person that I pretty much build your gun.
Right.
And like I said, it is absolutely where you are not touching it until it's right. And Mark is the same way on his end. So it's the perfect storm. You know what I mean?
Group of guys in that team. Yeah.
It just turned into the perfect storm. So
Tell me this: when are you going to start making pump rifles?
yeah,
I was going to ask that.
I get asked that a lot, and we have 2 more guns that are going to come first. But Mark has actually designed a pump rifle. I've seen it. He's pulled it up on the computer. You know, the program that that they make it on, and you can spin it around and look at it and all that stuff. I've seen it. Really cool.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's cool. And but he's got 2 other guns that are going to come out before that, and I haven't talked to him to pin him down on it if that's what's going to follow, but I do know these other 2 guns, they're both going to be muzzle loaders. I guess I'll give one of them, I'll just say it, but one of them is going to be a bolt action. So you guys were talking about the Midwest and how the Woodman Arms Patriot hasn't really hit out there yet. I guess I would argue I'm not so sure that gun is for Midwest hunters because you're hunting in Illinois and Iowa and you're sitting on cornfields that are 500 yards long. A lot of those guys, they want a 11-pound gun that will shoot 1,000 yards, right? There's a whole nother market, and I never realized it, but being in this business now, like, there is a whole nother market. So there's like the Patriot is really designed for guys like us up here. But again, I'm not so sure people that are sitting on cornfields, that's really the gun for them. So anyways, Mark has made we haven't made it yet, but it's all designed, all done. They're down to the final draft of it, and we're just about to start cutting parts.
Wow.
And
a bolt-action muzzleloader.
It's going to be a bolt-action muzzleloader, and like done right with the right load, smokeless, all the things. I'm not going to say 1,000 yards, but Mark has said to me it's going to be a 1,000-yard gun.
Wow.
Holy shit.
Now, is that smokeless powder more like powerful than 209 or whatever?
Yeah, I shot it last year. I shot a buck with it last year. It was my first year using it, and it's more finicky. You got to play with it a lot more. It's definitely more weather affects it. There's certain this stuff in 30-degree weather will not go off, but this one right here will. There's a lot of tinkering, playing. Do I trust it as much as Blackhorn? Nope. But the velocity you get out of these things and the speed you get, like Mark, I'll tell you my gun. I was shooting a 45 cal. It's one of our long range ones, so a 28-inch barrel.
Yep.
Now our long range are 26, but it was a 28-inch barrel, and I was shooting a 310 grain full bore bullet.
Wow.
That's a heavy bullet, right?
Big pointy looking thing,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, awesome bullet. It was great. But anyways, we chronographed that one, and I was getting that bullet. It was 2,600 and change feet per second. Now, Mark was shooting a 40 cal, and the 40 was awesome. And I made a big mistake because I was shooting mine a lot. And Mark's funny. He's always like, Timmy, shoot my gun for me. Like, sight this in, because I shoot a lot, and he trusts me, and I shoot his guns. I shot his 40. That thing was shooting 2,900 and change.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, so you shoot.
What's an OT6? What's an OT6?
I think it's...
I don't even around there.
Yeah,
28,
28, I think.
Yeah.
That's
So,
smoking.
You got a 40 cal, 250 grain bullet going 2,900. Like, all we had to do is go up 1 grain, and we would have broke 3,000.
Holy smokes.
Yeah,
Holy
crazy.
shit.
So these things end
That's
up turning into little sniper rifles. You know what I mean? It's a single shot sniper rifle. And that particular gun, I messed up because it's almost like my truck is all paid off and I own it, and it's really not that great, but I just drove your brand new blank, and oh man, now I want it. I shot Mark's 40.
You don't want to go back to the other one?
Dude, so I got a 40. I just built my barrel the other day, so I'm going to switch over to a 40 now.
No kidding.
I was so impressed with it. I mean, I was shooting that thing at 300, 325, 350. That was as far as I could get.
And you're still using a peep with it?
No. These are scopes.
This scope gun.
Oh, yeah.
And okay.
Yep. But the thing, what's cool with them is...
Stump guns.
Stump guns.
Yeah, these things are so flat. Because they're going so fast, they're so flat. You just have it's like a fast bow. Your pins get so tight together, right? And that's what that 40 cal, because it's so fast, it just there's so little thinking you got to do. It's borderline. If you could see him, put it on him.
Put it on the deer.
Yeah.
Now, is there a minimum for barrel size for a muzzleloader to hunt with?
I think there is.
Is
That's what I was thinking about. I thought
Is
it
it
was
45?
Yeah, so I know some states,
some states are.
certain states like New Hampshire, you
Right.
can use a 40 cal, but I
You
know
can.
that there's other states that like it has to be like most of them are 45 is the lowest. Some of them. So there's certain states you wouldn't be able to use a 40 cal, but there's a ton of states that you can.
So do
Like
you
the
guys
Midwest or something like
Yeah.
that. You get some long range out
Right.
of that gun by the sounds.
do you make a tracker in a 40?
We haven't. I haven't. No. Well,
Beca-
a tracker
Like a tracker
Patriot?
Patriot, yes.
You do make them.
but not like a tracker with the peep sight.
No.
We haven't done that. Matter of fact,
That'd be
all
kinda
those
cool.
Yeah, those barrels we don't even put the screw holes for the front bead
Oh, okay,
because
'cause they're
it's
still-
such a
yeah.
long range gun. Why would you ever want to peep? But I got to tell you, there's a little piece of me that like
Because if
it would be cool.
if you made one like the Patriot with a peep or whatever, and you made a sabbated bullet for that, that actually means your lead is actually 30 cal, like 35.
35 cal.
See, then you're going to be smoking
Dude,
that thing in there at
fast.
35. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I
That's
feel
a
like the
Whalen.
small. Yeah, it's a Whalen.
Yep.
I feel like the smaller you go, the better it is. With as long as it's got some lead there.
I never knew
Smart.
how much like last year setting that gun up. I never realized, and I shot a buck with it this past year. I shot him at 230 yards with that 310 grain bullet, and I could not believe. I definitely learned there's something to be said about heavy. You know what I mean? You get those light bullets and
Yeah.
get them going fast.
Yeah.
One, they're hard to tame. So, like, if you're going to not be able to get your gun dialed in, it's because of that. But when you get into heavier, they tame in easier. But, man, that velocity, when you hit
bet.
with that kind of speed, with that size and that amount of grain, I mean, it
No
just
kidding.
hammers. It's...
There must be so much shock just hitting
Yeah,
that
think of
animal.
it. It's like physics. You know what
Right,
I mean?
right.
It's like throwing a baseball and a wiffle ball at the same speed. Which
Right.
one hurts worse? Well, guess what? It's the baseball,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I know. So it's funny. I just said to go smaller, but I think that's the reason I'm thinking that way is because I grew up shooting a 50 cal muzzleloader
Yeah.
with Pirate X pellets and everything.
Yep.
And that thing, man, it was like you hit a deer with it and they wouldn't bleed, and sometimes it wouldn't even pass through. They were
No.
just junk.
Yeah.
And then I went to the 45 with you guys, and it's like hammering these things. And I wonder if it's not so much as necking it down the smaller bullet, but it's the powder and
Yeah.
stuff like that, the black
It's
corn and
speed
stuff.
and weight.
Speed and weight. you
Weight is a good thing.
think? It is with the
oh
muzzle?
yeah.
So
I like heavy bullets now for sure.
so because when I got mine, you guys were saying the 225 grain.
Yeah.
But now you would say the other way.
So I switched to the 250s, but that being said, I had awesome luck with the 225s. I think there's a spot, it's probably like 175-ish. That's when you're light, but anything like 225 and up, you're good.
You're good.
You know what I mean? You throw a 225 fast, it's going to do some damage.
Now,
Yeah.
did you have to go up with your powder since you went to a 250 to
Uh,
gain that velocity?
Yeah, if you wanted to gain velocity,
Yeah.
but like that particular gun, it's the weirdest thing, but you have to kind of find your load. Your
Yeah.
barrel will tell you. So what we did, this is kind of neat, and I never knew how to do this, but Mark's like, all right, we're going to find your load. And I'm like, yeah, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you'll see. So he's like, do this. So he's like, pour 55 grains of, I was shooting H4198. He's like, pour 55 grains and shoot a 3-shot group out. We were shooting at, let's call it 60 yards. Off a bench, very controlled, 3 shots, 55 grains. And I shot a group, and I'm doing it with my hands, but I'll say it was about the size of a softball, right? So he's like, yeah, not good. Go to 56 grains. So we did 56, shot a 3-shot group, softball. 57 grains, shot that group. It might have got maybe just a tick better, but it was still about the size of a softball. I hit 58 grains. I took 3 shots, and it looked like you shot with a 12-gauge shotgun. There was one bullet hole, and every single one of them were in that. I mean, just cut each
Wow.
other. It was this big. It was
No
the size
kidding.
of a quarter. Once I hit that 58, my barrel did that. I went right back out to 300 yards. I dialed it at 150. And then backed up to 300. And I'm telling you, just driving tacks. But 1 grain, 57 was softball. 58 was. It's
That's
the
something.
craziest thing. But
Yeah.
my barrel, that's what my barrel wanted. The very next one might be shooting 56. But that's how you actually find the load.
So what is it? Is it the steel? Is that what the difference is in the barrels?
Mark
Because
would
aren't
be-
you like down to like the friggin' thousandths or more?
Yeah,
With
well, the
your-
grain. Oh, you're talking.
I'm talking the barrel. So why is why is each barrel different down to the grain?
I don't know.
Because I'm wondering if it's something to do with the way the steel is, or
I don't
something
know.
that takes heat or something.
I'm not sure. I know my pump gun is like that. My
It's
pump
weird.
gun
Yeah.
loves 180 grain core locks. I
Yeah.
shoot $50 box Hornadays out of it, and it's all over the place.
Isn't that
Yeah,
funny?
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know the reason. Mark would be able to tell you, but I don't know
It'd
why.
be a good question
There is
for
something
him.
to it, obviously.
Yeah.
Something to do with the steel or something, maybe the way it takes heat or something. Because I think steel is all kind of different the way it
Yeah.
is tempered or whatever, maybe.
I'm not sure.
I have no idea. I'm talking out my ass right now.
Yeah. It was the
Sound like you
craziest
know what you're
thing.
doing.
I don't know.
Yeah. Crazy to see, though. And we did the same thing with Mark's gun, that 40 cal. When I shot that, we were shooting a 225 grain bullet. We walked right up through the process. I never got a good group. Mark's like, we're going to have to go up on weight and bullet. He ordered up 250 grain bullets. We went and did it again. Same thing. Walked up through. We hit one. And I'm telling you, man, I feel like I could shoot a golf ball right out of your hand at 300 yards with that
Wow.
thing. I mean, it's
That's
just
impressive.
but 1 grain, like I said. And
It's insane.
yeah. And then the other neat thing about that is we were chronographing the entire time. And all the grapefruit size groups, the chronograph would be 26:02. Next shot, 26:91. Next shot, 26:50, right? They were kind of spread apart. When I hit the 58, the chronograph, all the speeds tucked right together. I don't think there was 15 feet per second difference between all 3 shots, but all the other ones, not only was it not grouping well, but it also was kind of all over the place a little bit in the chronograph. Weirdest thing.
That is crazy.
Yeah. But if you ever want to like dial your barrel and find, the Patriots like you guys have is a little different. You could pour 100 grains by volume of Blackhorn, and you'd be like, I love this thing,
I've played around with mine, and it doesn't really shoot it doesn't shoot
Yep.
different. I've tried 90 and all the way to 120, and I ended up going with 120 just because it makes the loudest bang. And
Yeah. Kicks the most.
Oh, it
kicks
does.
the most.
It does.
Hey, do you shoot 120?
Oh, I do, yeah.
Yeah,
It
oh,
really
yeah.
rocks you.
It's horsepower
it'll
for
rattle
sure.
your
teeth.
Big horsepower.
One,
But
120 is a lot. And
Oh, yeah.
The problem is the thing is 5.5
cannon.
pounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a 6-pound gun.
with the
Yeah.
peat.
Man, like that's some recoil.
I
But
learned last fall I was using those Blackhorn measuring tubes, and I thought those are grains on the side of them, but I was told that that's volumes, or like a different measurement, not grains. Do you know anything about that?
it's grains,
Oh, it
but
is
it's by
grains.
volume.
Okay.
But if you took 100 grains by volume and put it on a scale, it weighs 70-something grains.
So it's not actually.
Yeah, like
Okay.
the volume and weight are not the same.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then I shoot 120 by volume. I
By
use
volume,
the tubes.
yes. Yep.
So that's actually not 120. It's probably like,
If you weight it, it's not 120.
what is it, like 100?
No, it's on the website.
Do you
Okay.
recommend weighing it then on a scale to be?
Honestly, here's what I don't like.
Nate does.
Nate does.
Here's what I don't like about the tubes. When you're pouring in, you're trying to land on a line, right? It's wicked easy to be like, oh, yeah, right there. But you're just, it's tough.
Yeah,
I
a
use
little
one
bit
of
of
those.
It
When I,
settles too.
yeah,
And the static in them too. I've noticed you can fight that trying to get them poured out.
get away from the clear plastic. If
Yeah.
you get a colored plastic, like your speed loaders and stuff,
Really?
it
No
doesn't.
kidding.
Yeah,
Huh.
get away from the clear plastic. But what I use is one of those brass loaders. The
Yep.
brass,
Yep.
the measurers.
Yep.
But mine has a cone on the top. The cone's to put in your barrel so you don't
Yep.
spill any. But the cone slides off to the side, so I just hold it in my hand, overfill it, and when I push the cone back over the top, it trims it off the same
Yep.
every time. Like I honestly would never try to land on a line ever.
me.
Well,
It's
yeah,
too,
me too. Well, the
It's
funny
too much
thing,
variable.
Yeah.
the funny thing with that gun that I have with the peep that I run from you guys is I don't even really get particular with where I land as long as it's up around 120 because I've shot it a bunch and I've seen
No,
it.
it shoots the same.
It shoots really well, and my personality is I try not to get too. I don't know what the word is. Like I try not to get too analytical with it.
Yeah.
I just we're gonna do it,
Yeah.
And I've shot it a lot from 90 to 120, like I said, by volume, and it's. I mean, I shoot at a plate at 50, 60 yards, and I'm always hitting.
So you got
Hitting
one of
that
those.
plate.
You ended up with one of those barrels that you could just pull whatever you want in there and it hits.
I
lucky
never
barrel.
moved. I never moved the peep
Yep.
out of the box.
Hey, by the
Yeah, we
way,
were just talking about that
by the
this
way,
morning. I had 2 of them like that.
That
Right
was-
out of the box. Boom,
that
boom.
was by design. So I put all the peeps together,
Yep.
and I shot this gun a lot, and I learned, for me anyways, the setting So, and I know the setting. I know exactly in elevation where that thing needs to be set for me.
Yep.
So when I build them, I know that if I get it there, and I learned with peeps, everybody's face is a little different. I could hand you my peep gun, and you would probably hit high with mine because you're skinny and you got a smaller face than me. A guy that has a heavier face will probably hit low with my gun, right?
Yep.
But I've got that general, at least for me, and I'm pretty average, right? So I just build them right there. So I know now when guys put them on, at least their first shot, they'll be on paper.
Yeah.
But I have had so many people say just what you just said.
We got similar
But you look at
faces.
me and you, we have the same face, dude.
yeah, it's funny how that
Yeah.
works. Yeah, I know my buddy, he's had to move his a lot, his Woodman, and he's still working at getting it like really dialed. And I'm like, man, I loaded it up right out of the box, and I was
You're
like
dialed.
splitting hairs with the thing. It felt like, but
Yep. But see, maybe he needs to start playing with his load a little
Maybe.
bit, you know?
he's got a 50 too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
but
It's funny. Some of them just right out of the box, guys are like,
Yeah,
oh my
that
God, this is the most accurate gun I've ever held in my life. And then there's other guys that just, they need to play with it a little bit.
I
So,
shot one a couple years ago. My buddy hit it first. I ended up getting the finishing shot on it, and if it wasn't 150 yards with that peep sight,
yeah.
I mean, it was all of 150. It was all the way up across this big cut, and it was running up through. You know, he was sick, and I hit him. He had kind of hit it like mid body or whatever. We could tell because his ballistic tip had a blue ballistic tip power belt, and it was stuck in that middle shot. I hit that thing right behind the shoulder, that far with the peep.
Yeah.
Ever since then, my confidence has been through the
Yeah.
roof,
That's a good shot.
and I think the confidence is the key for me.
Yep.
If I don't feel like I'm dangerous with the thing, I'm not. But if I do feel like it, maybe it was a lucky shot, but it's been real good for my confidence,
Yeah.
you know? I think that's everything. If you're not confident with your weapon, you're not going to do
sure.
well.
And those star tips are just devastating on animals too. from
Dude,
what
that
I've
thing
seen.
literally, my buck I got in Mass a couple years ago, I hit him top of the lungs. I never touched the spine. It was literally the top third of the lungs. So not a very good shot, really. Almost up into that no man's land.
Yep.
Dropped him.
Yeah.
Dropped him. And it was, I don't know if it was a shock or what.
Yeah.
Because everybody in the video, because there's a video of it, they thought I spined him.
Yeah.
I didn't touch anywhere near the spine. I was like this far from the backbone. It was right top of the ribs, both lungs, but he couldn't get up.
Yeah.
It was such a boom, like such an impact,
Yeah.
I think, that it took the wind out of him or something.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you right now, if I would have hit that deer with an 680 grain round nose, he would have done 40-yard dash or more.
Yeah.
Maybe more downhill.
Yeah.
But
You-
it's something with that.
You know, the other thing too with those guns, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think let's go back to the shot you're just talking about where you finished your buddy's deer off. 150 yards offhand on a deer running, okay?
Yep.
You and I both know that when that's going on, it's not bench shooting where you're breathing and putting pressure on your trigger and letting the gun surprise you.
Yep.
When you shoot like that,
Yep.
you actually have to set that gun off. The trigger on those guns, the Woodman Arms, those triggers are so clean and crisp out of the box. 3.5 pound pole. All you'd have to do is have a 5.5 pound pole with a long wall, and that thing would, people would struggle shooting it.
You'd
But
be pulling off the side.
you see what
or
I
up
mean?
or down.
That's
yeah.
where your flinches happen. But when you got a nice trigger, when you think it and it goes for you, you have to. That's what you need.
Yeah.
Those things come right out of the crate like that. You know what I mean? It's like
That's
They're
my
money.
favorite trigger.
Right?
They're
You
mine
kinda
too.
have,
Yeah.
Dude, and it's funny. I think growing up, I used to squirrel hunt with a 10-22
Yep.
with just open sights, but those things have the most garbage triggers ever. Like
Oh.
it's like a wicked hard pull, and it hits like a button or something. It's
Yeah.
kind of like this weird
Yeah.
thing. But I think growing up, shooting the heck out of that thing made me a good shot. I think because of just how hard
Yeah.
the pull was. But it's funny how. Yeah, people don't realize what they're getting with the Woodman, I think.
Yeah.
I think they're buying it because a lot of guys are buying them and they're cool right now.
It's going to
But
be the last one you buy, though.
It is.
I mean, that's
that's
the thing.
the what people don't realize is how much you guys put into it. You with the tracking stuff and the stuff that you know and have learned over, I don't know, how many years you've been tracking?
I'm 45 now, and I started 20-ish. So yeah,
Okay,
that's
so 25
that's-
years.
That's a
at
little
least.
scary to say. 25.
You're an elder statesman.
Yeah, so all those years of tracking and stuff, you incorporated that knowledge into this gun, and then
Yeah.
down to the trigger pull, like you're just saying, everything's money.
I remember
Cool, man.
back in the very beginning of Woodman Arms, I remember Mark stopping by my house. I was in my blacksmith shop with black mats on the floor, and I remember me and him took a piece of chalk and we drew that gun on the floor. And he's like, all right, so what do you think? And I was like, yeah, so you probably should have like a spot to carry right here. And we drew that thing on the floor. And it's so funny to me now to look back and like what this thing has turned into.
I know.
It's just crazy. But there really was a lot of thought. And it was some of my experience, and it was a lot of what Mark knew, probably way more of what Mark knew. But we pretty much built the gun for you guys. The guys like us, like, if you were going to make it, what would it be? And that's what we made, you know?
Another thing people don't really talk about is they don't rust. You don't have to like wipe it down at the
I know.
and whatnot, like a
And you don't have to
7600.
clean it.
I
That's the
clean
biggest
mine though.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
Well, it
my-
just slides down the barrel
I
so
know,
much
but
better when it's dirty.
It's my dad. All the years of forcing me to clean muzzleloaders, I can't get it out of my system. I keep them clean.
I finally gave in, so I cleaned for years.
Yep.
And then Woodman finally rubbed off on me because all his guns, dude. Like,
you don't clean them at all.
Never. His guns never ever get a patch in the barrel ever. They just never get cleaned. And that's what I do now. Like I empty it out at the end of the season, make sure it's empty, and I put it in my safe and I load it up next year. And I just keep on. Yeah, I just keep on hunting. I haven't run a patch through my barrel and cleaned the barrel in 3 years.
Can you imagine any other muzzleloader trying to do that?
Oh no,
Holy smokes.
dude, no. They're junk after 1 year if you don't clean them. But I like to look up that barrel at a light in the house and see it all like shiny.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're expensive guns too, so it's something I think I just like to try to keep it nice and new.
Yep.
But mine shoots the same dirty or clean too. I've noticed. But
Yeah.
also, I'm not getting down to a micro level either because I'm shooting a peep. So as long as I'm.
So I've done it with a scope and really to see. So in my experience and the times that I've done it, when you follow your barrel, you get it dirty, you dial your gun in, you get it shooting bullseyes, go clean it. If this is your bullseyes right here, your first shot after being clean will be just, for me, on the one that I tested, was up and over, and it was just about 1.5 inches out.
Right.
The very next shot and all the following ones were right back in there. So it was just out a little bit. Once it got fouled, it was right back into it.
No kidding.
Yeah. So it's not out a lot, but it is out.
Just a little bit.
Just a noticeable amount.
Yeah.
How was your fall last year, Timmy?
Good. It was good. I didn't kill anything up in Maine tracking or anything. I tracked one really good, big buck. I was pretty close to him at the end, but I didn't get a crack at him. No, I actually didn't even see him, but gave it all. We were standing 4.5 miles from the truck at 4:30 in the afternoon. So, you know what I mean? It was. I gave it everything we could, but I just didn't get a crack at him. I'm not even so sure I followed a lot of other bucks. I'm at that stage in my life. I know what I want. I walk by bucks that I know now I shouldn't, but I do. I walk by bucks that.
I don't do that.
You're looking. I don't either.
Yeah, me neither.
You're
I'm not
looking
to
for
that point.
240,
I'm just looking for big deer.
like 240, 250,
220, and I'm
220.
Yeah.
Is that your number? Is that like your
No,
baseline?
like I know when I see it. When I see it,
It's
like
just like whoa.
yeah.
How do you describe that for someone listening? It's just years of experience.
Sloppy. That's what I describe it as.
Yeah.
Sloppy
When they look
track.
weird.
Yeah, they got that big wide stagger.
Yeah.
You could be 70 yards away from it and see it crossing the road up in front of you, and I know it immediately. It's just the way he walks, and it's just his stagger and his stride. You know, those big, mature bucks, they get those big wide chests on them, and they got that, and they
turn their feet out.
That's, and that's when you're getting into the next bigger bracket. But when they get in, age and that kind of weight, that's when that stuff starts happening. But I follow ones that might not like really turn out, might not be super flat-footed, but I can tell by his stride and his width that he's, I don't know. To be honest with you, it's, if he's over 200, then I'm taking him, But I walk by buck tracks that are, they could be 195 pounds and have 150-inch racks.
Right.
And
Or
I'm
better.
stupid. Like, I've realized now, like,
Or better.
it took a long time for me to really get it through my head, but it's not smart. I shouldn't do that. Because the problem is, you guys know, you do it. How hard is it to find a 225-pound buck track? It's not easy.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna jump in and say that I can think about my whole, I've been tracking pretty hard for like 10 years, and I wander all over the place. I'm pretty, I have the wanderlust, whatever. In my entire time tracking, I can only tell you a few that were like oh my god, like turning the feet way out, walking all weird. They almost
Their feet are, like,
they
flopping
almost
off the
remind
side.
me of
They kick They
Yeah.
kick off
Yeah.
to the side like a
like a dog or
Yeah.
something, kind of like it kind of reminds me of like a golden retriever the way
right,
they
they're
walk.
just flopping all over.
Yeah.
And that's why I call it a sloppy track, because you'll see that in the track. They'll kick the snow off to the side,
Right.
And every time, boom, 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 and I mean you can see that, like Timmy just said, you
Kind
can
of
see
like
that.
swinging almost.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've only
and that's
seen-
that big, huge chest.
Yeah.
It's age. It
Yeah.
takes age to get a buck to ever do that,
Yeah.
So, but back up to last season, I ended up with that Woodman Arms, the 45 cal long range. I shot a ton last year. I shot a buck around my house, a nice 8-pointer. He weighed 187 pounds, I think, and shot him at 230 yards. And it's the furthest I've ever shot a buck. And I have a spot where I could, and that's why I set that gun up. But I ended up killing him there.
No kidding.
Yeah,
The
I
power
almost.
line?
Nope, no, it's a swamp.
Oh, cool.
I actually almost killed a bigger one, the one I really wanted, and I was trying to range him, and my rangefinder wasn't picking him up. And the time I was messing with that, it was just too much time went by, and he ended up, I couldn't shoot him anymore. Knowing now, but if I could back it up, hindsight, like I knew what he was. I knew he was standing at 230 yards. I should have just put it on him like what I know and plugged him, but stupid. It was just a dumb deal.
Live and you learn, I guess.
Yeah, it was one of those. I won't make that mistake again, but I just, in my head, I had shot so much last summer with my range, like that long range and rangefinder, and it matters because a muzzleloader, it's on the lower end of speed, so you've got to know, and I just, in that moment, I was like, man, I wanted to know that number because I knew the gun so well. If I just had that number, I knew I could just poke him, and the rangefinder, like I said, just wouldn't pick him up. So I was like, oh my God, I was so mad.
I'm sure you're shaking too, trying to get that
Oh
thing
yeah,
on
that
him.
thing was all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. He was with another buck. He was another buck I had saw, a nice 8-pointer, big wide one. But I could tell he wasn't a real big deer. He had chased a doe through, and about 2 or 3 minutes later, that same buck came walking, and I could tell he kind of had his ears back, and had his head cocked like this, and all of a sudden that buck behind him comes walking out. What it was is that bigger one had come in. When they posture and stiff walk and they're just pushing that other buck out of the way, that's what he was doing. And
kidding.
he was all bristled up. He looked like he was 240 pounds because he was just, how they do.
Kick some ass.
They get stiff-legged and they're just letting him know I'm bigger and get out of here. And he was walking that buck off and getting him out of there. And
Their ears
crazy.
kind of go back, right? Yeah, their ears.
I'd seen it in videos, but
I've never seen it.
oh, it was
I've
awesome.
only seen it in videos.
But man, I'll tell you, he looked big, and his rack was
believe
way big. He was a
Really?
way bigger buck. Hands down, I don't care if he weighed 170 pounds, which he didn't.
But he was a big
But
giant.
he was one of those ones like
Big
that
mega.
is what I was waiting for. Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
it was nice, but
Oh, shit. Well, he's
Now, do you
still
hunt
there, right?
Massachusetts?
I haven't hunted
Okay.
Mass yet. One of these days I'm going to,
Yeah.
but I just haven't yet.
Probably so busy that time of year, getting ready for Christmas.
Yeah.
And on,
Yeah.
working away.
And I guess at the end of November, when you get into December and stuff, like it's time for me to get back. I got little
Yeah.
kids too, and
Yep.
Right.
Makes
I
sense.
hunt a lot, so by the time it's a month and a half in, my
Right.
my wife is ready for dad to be home.
Yeah.
So,
The kitchen passes are all gone.
Yeah, right? Oh,
Yeah.
my gosh, yeah. No,
but
that
maybe
makes sense.
maybe like I'd be able to pull it off here, like a few days here and there. But maybe when my kids are a little bit bigger, and you know what I mean, I'd have a little more time and be able to. And we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tracks are funny in Mass.
I've heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what I look for a lot is the turning their feet out.
Yep.
But, the one I killed down here a couple years ago weighed 158.
That big one?
Yeah, weighed 158. Yeah.
That was almost
was-
the end of the season, though.
It was Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
but still,
Yeah.
it's not a very big deer.
Yeah.
Who
Who cares though? Look
Yeah,
at him.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
his
Monster.
feet, I tracked him, and in the video, I say a couple times, because I was still doubting it a little bit. I'm like, boy, he's acting like a big one, but it's like, I come from, more north than here, obviously, or more north than Massachusetts, and usually I'm looking for the big
Yeah.
stomper, the big, flat footer, the 4-finger track, but down here, it can get super tricky, and I think a lot of guys that come down from, like, the kind of country that we're used to, I bet you they do walk over a lot of big bucks.
I know I
because
do.
it's- Yeah, you.
I still haven't gotten it figured out yet.
Well,
I walk
dude,
over a lot of good
honestly,
tracks, I think.
honestly, if you think it's a buck, you might as well just follow it.
Yep.
I mean, that's the biggest thing, because it's like, okay, maybe it's a 4-pointer, but maybe it's a 160-inch buck. Like,
Exactly.
you might as well just follow
Right.
it. It's the end of the year. You've already hunted friggin' 3 months or
Yeah.
2 months. You might as well just follow them out.
I'm surprised
But-
that thing you said December
24th.
24th,
24th.
that it was still holding.
So there was tons of acorns that year.
We were some paranoid, though, dragging it out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we were. You should have seen us. I was
carrying the thing.
I'm like holding it. Like, we're like taking it. It was actually a pretty gnarly drag, too. Like, if you look on the right side of his shoulder, it's all hide right there. We drug the hide off him.
Wow.
But
Beautiful deer.
yeah, thank you.
What you dream of.
Yep,
Yep.
it is. Yeah, it's an
Super,
awesome
super
deer.
lucky that I killed him. And
You
I
might-
know that.
Did you know he
No.
had good headgear like that?
When I killed
by
him, yeah.
Only when you killed him?
When I killed
You
him.
couldn't tell following him?
Nope,
No?
because what happened was I came up out of a swamp and I jumped a pile of deer off a shelf, and it just snowed like an inch or two that night.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, there wasn't much.
It was like 11 a.m. when we got there because we had already tried a spot before we got there. I kicked a bunch of deer off the shelf above the swamp. I go up there. The does went one way and he went the other. That was my first indication.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, because I've seen it a bunch of times where I jump a group of deer and a little buck will hang with the does.
Yep.
And I've seen where the big one will kind of sneak out the back door, especially like when I used to hunt around the farm country and they drive deer. I'd always hear about the old timer.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yep.
old timer would be in the back of the drive because that's where the big buck would come out
Looping
the back
back,
door. So that was my first indication that it was a big buck. And then I got to looking around after he calmed down, after I jumped him or whatever. When he was walking, he was really turning out his feet.
Yeah.
He wasn't walking on the back of his feet as much,
Mm-hmm.
and his stagger and stride really was nothing really to write home about, but he was doing that whole
Yep.
thing, and that's kind of what tipped me off. And yeah, I just tracked him a few miles, got up on a big flat, basically on top of the mountain.
Yep.
And I was hitting my grunt tube the whole way because it was grunchy, and I just heard something, and he ran right back looking for me.
Really?
Yeah, and
And you're sure it's the same one?
oh yeah, we followed his track out after I killed him,
Really?
and you literally can see I was only a few hundred yards behind him because he was going slow. I think he was starting, and actually, hindsight, he might have been heading back for the does
Maybe.
because
You
maybe
went 2 miles?
ish, probably 2 miles from where I jumped him. But the only reason I think when he got up on the top, he must have really slowed down, and that's where I gained time on him coming up that mountain. Because when I took off on him after I let him settle, I took off on him because I mean it was probably almost like 1 p.m, and it's Christmas Eve. You know, figured it was probably the last day I could hunt that year. I just took off on him, and I get up on top of that ridge, and by the grace of God, he turned around and wanted to look for a fight. I guess I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I'm very, very lucky that it was that deer
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it very well could have been a 100-inch 8-point,
Sure.
and I would have been just as happy.
Absolutely.
But it's like I didn't. It's like nothing. I didn't do anything that special.
That's the fun thing about tracking because
is.
you have no idea
I
what's
had no
what's
idea.
ahead of you. It could be a 15-inch spike horn, that base is
I know. Yeah,
like that, and I'd be happy with that because it's a huge deer and it would be obviously not ordinary.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those things are
just
going
as
through
cool.
my mind the whole time that I'm tracking. I was gonna say, did you, when Timmy asked you if it went through any brush or anything, or avoided anything, or avoided any big trees?
nothing. And
Nothing.
He, and he never fed either.
So it was all open hardwoods almost.
Open hemlock. It's like this. There's just big, huge stands of hemlock where I tracked him through.
Huh.
Like wicked. Like if you look in the video, you can see like 150 yards up through the hemlocks. But when I got on top to where I killed him, it got kind of beachy. Like there was some beach. All the beach up there were real diseased though. They look like shit. But there was some beach whips.
Yeah.
And that's what I was grunting the whole way. And when I see him come back, the first thing I saw when I heard the noise was his frame coming back through the whips. And he kind of like angled kind of a little bit like quartering to me when he was coming back through. And man, I just don't know exactly what he was doing, but
So what's your guys' take on that? If you guys see a buck go through the thick, spruce tree, are you going to leave him or are you going to stay on him?
Oh, sometimes those great big racked ones, they'll dive. They'll go through that stuff.
Yeah.
I like, and there's certain instances that will make them do that. Like it could be a hot doe that's in there. He'll dive into crap. They're like, oh man, but I love them when it's just sort of natural. Like, oh, I've been bedded for the last 3 hours, and I'm going to go check that doe group. So he's kind of just relaxed and doing.
Then he might be going around stuff.
Then when you follow them like that right there, like if they got head, you'll know it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they do things. They step around trees and all the things. They a lot of times you got trees, and if they I followed bucks that there's 2 trees right here that are 18 inches apart, and he went around it. When the easy way was to go right in the middle, but he just didn't want to because of his rack, you know.
Yeah, they know what they got on their head.
Oh
I guess.
yeah. And then the other thing I like too is height is difficult, you know, but
To judge.
yeah, there's ways you can do it though. You know, there's definitely ways you can do it, and it's a lot easier when you have snow on your trees and stuff like that. They'll go, you know, again when that natural he's just being normal. You know, the tops of their tines they'll brush snow off and stuff like that. Another thing too, 11, 15, 19 when I killed him. The following year, I shot another great big buck in there. All those bucks up in there, all the scrapes that I found, 11, 15, 19, and that other buck. And he was the same thing. It was a nice buck, not as big as 11, 15, 19, but he was really nice and big. When they make scrapes, those suckers, every one of them, the branch that they, you know, the licking branch there,
Twirl them up.
they twirl them up. They'd be laying in the scrapes. 11, 15, 19, I found a ton of his scrapes. Every one of them had the branch laying in it.
And he's probably reaching branches 8 feet up. There with his
Exactly.
round
You know,
on his
so
head.
I was looking at these branches, you know, and I saw the height of him.
Yeah.
I'm like, I knew. I was like, yeah, he's got some height to him, you know, just to be able to get up there and get that into his antlers, to get a hold of it, to rip it out. You watch on the video, and I pick one up, and I was like, oh, he ripped that right out of the ground somewhere. That isn't what it was. When in that moment, that's what I thought it
Fell
was.
out of his rack.
Came out of his,
No, he got it. It was
scrape.
Twisted up.
yeah, it was the branch that he was putting the scrape under, and he was big enough and tall. His rack was so tall that he was getting a hold of him up there. And then, like I said, so now I've realized, yeah, you see that limb laying in the scrape? Trust
It's a
me.
big,
That's
giant
exciting.
Oh,
one.
yeah. He's probably got height.
Yeah.
you know?
When we're ever scouting or hunting or whatever together, and we find them where it's just like the broken limb the size of your thumb.
Yeah.
You know, that's
And
when I'm
their
like,
head
holy
height, they're
crap.
higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny, those bucks piss me off though, because they'll ruin a good scrape.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have a wicked good licking branch there that
yeah.
you've had a camera on for 3 years, and then a big boy comes in, gone.
Yep.
And they don't work it no more because they don't have that licking branch. I have a random question that just kind of popped in my head. Have you guys ever followed a buck that dropped a antler while you were following it?
No. I haven't. Nope.
No, I haven't either. Kid I know, Thomas Ciotti in Massachusetts last year was following a buck. He jumped him and both sides popped off.
Really?
Yeah, nice 8-pointer too.
It seems pretty
I'll go-
common down in this area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But I'll go back to the question you asked about what what they're going through and stuff. So the biggest rack buck that I shot, I cut him on the road, and he went through two little pine trees that were loaded with snow.
Yep.
And I mean, this thing was like this. You could see it perfect. When he went through, he brushed
Yeah.
both sides. And I
That's
was
so
like,
cool.
holy shit, here we go.
Yeah.
cool.
And then he'd go through raspberry whips.
Yep.
Same thing. You didn't even have to look at the track. All you could see the raspberry whips that were just brushed off totally, and you just walk through. Anyway, I come to a spot where, I mean, there's trees like almost 2 inches in diameter. Those, just whips, really, really tight together. And I remember getting on the phone with my father because he was, on the other side of the mountain. I'm like, boy, this buck, he's a nice deer, but he can't have much for horns. I can't imagine how he got through that. But 2 seconds later, I popped through there, and there he was, 40 yards, and I got him. But he had just plowed right through, and I was talking with Lane Benoit about it after, and he's like, the biggest mistake that you almost made because I was trying to find out whether or not I should still stay on the track.
Right.
And he's like, that indication that you saw right at the road, that's all you needed.
Yeah.
As
No
long
more
as you
doubting.
Yep, no more doubt. Put that in your mind. That deer will now go through
Right.
whatever, and it doesn't matter because he already went through that stuff and you saw what it was.
It's easy to get that doubt in your head after
Oh,
you're
yeah.
on him
My
for a few
God.
miles.
Exactly.
It's
It's
like, well,
like-
maybe he's not as big as I thought he was, and then
Those
Yep.
are my biggest regrets.
Yeah.
Like one right off the top, this big mountain system in northern Vermont, I took this buck out of the bottom of the mountain all the way up into the top. And what he would do is he'd go to every spruce knob or spruce bank. And I think he would go, and you could see where he'd stand there for a couple minutes. And I think he was winding for does. And it was like the third or fourth spruce knob I took him on. I was like, yeah, I don't think he's that big. I'll go find a bigger one. And I hiked all the way down. It was almost like 2 o'clock when I got back to my truck. My day was shot.
Yep.
I should, that's the one that I really think back on. And it probably wasn't a great big buck, but I could have killed him.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like I need to. What happens? I bounce around so much, and even in one day, even tracking, I'll track one and go get on another one, and I've been successful doing that.
Yeah.
But
I
I think
don't do
I
that.
also I it's good and bad.
Yeah.
And I need to
I hunt like you. I'm the
Yeah.
same.
I
Yep.
need to focus more on like when I just do those big adventure tracks. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I'm on them. I'm gonna go and
All right, so
Going-
Timmy, the misses.
yeah,
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I know. We got down a few rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Few rabbit holes.
Tangent.
It's kind of funny because what we were just talking about is like, how do you know they're big and what they're doing and all that stuff. Well, we were just talking about it. I was like, this is a perfect time to tell this story. But so this buck, I never did get him. I didn't even miss him. To be honest with you, I never even saw him. But knowing what I know what it was. But we were in Ontario. It was back in the day. I was up there with Lanny and Shane, and me and my buddy George were hunting on our own. But anyways, we'd gotten out in this place. I don't know. It was whatever. I don't know. It was probably 6 or 7 miles out. We'd drive out in there, and at the very, almost to where I was hunting this deer, at the very end, there was this big swampy bog you had to go through. And we ended up on that road because Lanny was like, oh, we had a Jeep Cherokees and it was a lifted. And he's like, I got a road that nobody else can get in. And he said, you guys should go out there. So we did, and you had to drive across this. The water was up over your rocker panels. I had a 6-inch lift in my Jeep and shit. Like, it was deep, you know what I mean?
Like a little hairy. Like if you get.
Oh, yeah. It was hairy. So
Probably not
anyways,
many guys doing that.
yeah.
Not many.
So anyways, it was like, I was there for, I think it was 12 days. I hunted this buck for, I think it was 10 days straight. It was the oddest thing. Every single day. There wasn't snow all the time. I found him where he was. I'd go across that water hole, and right when you got past it, it was this little tiny winter road on the left-hand side. And I went in there one day and I scouted this ridge, and he had sign all over the sign of this ridge. So I was just waiting for snow, but I kept poking around in there. I'd stay right in there, but he had it just tore up. Like, it was just that, you know, when you go into those places, you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Spooky.
this is his spot right here. Yeah, you
That's
just,
spooky.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
it's almost like your belly's rolled over
Oh,
just because you feel
yeah.
like any second you're just going to see him, you
Yeah.
know? It was his spot.
Mm-hmm.
So we and George, we hunted him for, George was all tagged out, so he was just with me, but we went there every single day. Finally, the snow comes. I followed him, I think it was 1 or 2 times before the day that I almost did get him, but it was the weirdest thing. I'd drive across that water hole, and I'd park my truck. As soon as I got on the outside, I'd walk probably 30 yards down that winter road, and that buck, for some reason, every single night, he would come down off of that ridge, come to that spot, not cross the road, just, like I said, 30 yards down this winter road. He'd walk right down to the end of it right there and turn around and go right back up in.
kidding.
I swear to God, for days, I would drive across there in dark. I'd take my flashlight, I'd walk down the end, and there's his track, brand new, fresh, right there. Every day for like days straight. It was the oddest thing. I still can't explain that. But anyways,
Was that late season or was that?
nope, that
during the
was
rut?
that. So up there, it was the season was over on November 15th. So
Oh,
this was
wow.
probably like say November 10th or something
Okay.
like that, right? And there was a pile of does and stuff in there and blah blah blah. But anyways, finally the day comes. So we get fresh snow, and I know what he's doing. I'm gonna go in there. We're gonna cut his track. Sure enough, drive across that big deep water hole, get to the other side, park my truck. I walk 30 yards down there. There's that little tiny trail right here. It keeps coming down, and there's his track, brand new, fresh. I'm like, oh my God. And it's a monster. It's a monster. Up there, those bucks are a little different. There's different subspecies in their feet are not like our main bucks. Main bucks just got big feet. Those bucks out there, you could shoot a buck that weighed 275, and it would look almost like a 190-pound buck
Yep.
in Maine, right? It's big, but not
kidding.
what you think.
That's the first time I've ever heard that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
But then you could also get some that look like caribou tracks.
Then there's other
Really?
ones that
Yeah.
are just like the Maine bucks that weighs 250. It's a big, giant square, right? This buck had that. Like, he was
Big.
like a Maine buck, right? Shane Benoit, I dragged a buck out for him. That buck weighed 200. It's the biggest deer I've ever actually got my eyes on. 275 pounds dressed. And if you looked at his feet, dude, it looked like a 195-pound
Really?
Maine buck. It was yeah, just monster, huge. Like I said, 275
That is
dressed.
insane.
I dragged it out by myself after 30 hours of driving there. We showed up. He's like, oh, you want something to eat? I'm like, yeah, I'm starving. I've been driving for 32 hours. He's like, oh, yeah, by the way, feel like dragging a deer? And I'm like, all right, I guess. So 30 hours of driving, and he took me right out there, and I dragged
This
out.
giant.
Oh, yeah, 275 pounds.
Man.
dressed.
You earned it, huh?
Oh, yeah. Nasty place, too. But anyways, there's this track. I take him. So I followed him, me and my buddy George, we followed him for, I'm going to say it probably was, I don't know, couple miles maybe-ish. And was the crazy part. But I swear to you, dude, you could have grabbed yourself a four-wheeler, hopped on that four-wheeler, and there was never one time that you would have had to get off of that four-wheeler to get around. He literally walked through those woods somehow, some way that a four-wheeler, I'm telling you, there was nothing was ever smaller than like 4 feet.
Oh my God.
Like it was the craziest thing because you look through the woods, you know what I mean? And there's no way, like if you were doing it on your own, you'd be like, there's no way you could drive a four-wheeler through here.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, and I know I sound nuts right now, but I swear to you, there was not one time in those 2 miles that a four-wheeler could not have just followed behind him. Like that's
Could only imagine what he had on his head.
Yeah.
He could have been 35 inches
it
wide.
was just one of those ones. And back in that day, those kind of bucks were up there, like Glenn knows.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just, you didn't know what you were going to get. But this one was so ultra
Wide.
that he somehow, some way would walk through the woods that, like I said, a four-wheeler could go on. It was the craziest thing. And I was young, but I knew enough at that point. I'd killed a bunch of bucks and stuff, so I knew kind of what was up. Now I know a little bit more, but thinking back on that, like what he must have had on his head to have to go through the woods the way he did. So anyways, we follow him for 2 miles. I come down around, he's with some does, and I come down around this corner, I remember, and it got to it opened up a little bit, and bam, this nice buck comes. There he is, standing right there. I snap up and whale him. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that ain't him. That ain't him. What it was is that buck I was right behind him, and I saw it in the track. I mean, I was going to see this thing in just minutes. Any second, I'm going to see this buck. And all of a sudden, there's this nice buck. And this is day like 10 or 11. I've been hunting my butt off, right? This is a nice buck. And I shot him. And we got that all done, and I remember I followed the big one. As soon as I walked over, I was like, man, I knew right there. I was like, that's not him. Mm-hmm. And I knew it when I was doing it, but I was in that moment. I got caught in the moment. I was like, that's a nice buck. I'll take him. You know what I mean? I was 2 minutes from killing that or seeing that big one. I followed around that, like the one I shot was going in, and it turns out there was this little tunnel that went up through. Well, you go through that tunnel, and it was this big open. It wasn't a cut, but it was just open, like 30 acres of open. Dude, that big buck was right there with those does, because after I got that one done, I walked through just because I had to know. And dude, his track was all over. If I had just not shot that buck and gone through that little tunnel, I was about to step out in this open, and he was going to be right there.
Fully going to rewind time.
Oh my God.
Hindsight's
And like I said,
20/20.
once it all kind of, yeah.
Flipping him off.
Well, the one that you got was a nice one.
Yeah, it was a nice buck. It was a good buck. But like I said, I looked at it and I thought about it so much, and all I could come up with was like, that buck was the buck of a lifetime. It was hands down, no doubt in my mind, the biggest buck Timmy Bolduc has ever had the track.
Did you ever get a look at him?
Nope,
Those 10
never
days?
even saw him. Never saw him once. One time we jumped. One time, me and George with no snow. He came in one morning and he caught us. He caught our wind and he blew. And I could tell. I could hear his rack. And you know, but like I saw a flash of him, but I just couldn't get a crack at him. And I just, you know what I mean. But it's almost like, okay, here's your opportunity. God was like, I'm going to give you the chance to shoot the biggest buck of your entire life right here, but you got one little test to pass. And I failed. I failed miserably
I think
right there.
all of us would have failed.
Oh, my word.
You can't. Split-second decisions like that. You see a big buck,
And you're in the moment, you're on the track, and you see the buck. That's the deer, but
then,
it may not be.
But then what's happened is life has gone on, and now I've gone and I've shot some bucks, and you know, and like I know what these bucks did. So when I get them, I'm like, wow, this thing is 18 inches wide, but it's 150 inches because he's tall. So I've learned through the years now of how these bucks walk, and there's a lot of them that I had in my head. They're really not that great racks, but then, like I said, I kill them, and it's 18 inches wide, but his tines are 12 inches long, right? It's 150 inches. He's just not 24 inches wide, but it's still 100. He's just got height. So now with all that experience, I think all the way back to like what that buck did. Again, it's just a once. You're lucky if you ever get the chance to follow one like that in your life, and
That's wild.
He was
Yeah.
a freak, and I
just
think
a freak.
I think genetically super wide bucks are rare because I think they're probably inferior to tighter bucks because of the fact it's harder for them
Yeah.
to run from predators.
Yep.
Can you imagine if you have something that's 30 inches wide and you're trying to run from coyotes
Yeah.
after the rut?
There's a
You're
lot
going to
of
get
wolves
hung up
there,
and
too.
stuff. Yeah, so like a buck that has a tighter, taller rack is going to have an easier time
Sure.
escaping.
Yep.
So therefore, the breeding, I feel like that's why those big. I mean, there's only a handful of bucks, like in the Boone and Crockett buck, that have ever been over 30 inches.
Right.
You know, it's such a rare thing.
Yeah.
But I bet you that one was up there.
Like I said, I mean, there's no
You
doubt.
know?
Like I said, it sucks to have to talk about it with never even getting to see it, to say, like, yep, that's what it was. But there was zero doubt.
Yeah.
And then to make it even worse, like I said, those bucks up there, I know how they walk, and I know what their tracks look like, and I know what weight does in snow to tracks. I know what it does. That buck was probably... That sucker, you know,
Could have been 300.
280.
280. It was
280,
one of
300.
those, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oof.
Like it was just the buck of anyone's
A
lifetime.
dream, yeah.
Yeah.
And
When
who
was
knows?
that?
What's that?
When was that?
That was back in like
Was that 10?
2000.
Okay.
Nope, I'll tell you what
Nine?
year. 2009.
Yeah.
That was in 09.
That's
Yep.
before the
Wow.
wolves and whatever took a toll in that
It
area.
was
You feel?
it was
Yeah.
just about to
Yeah.
happen. Like it was not as good as when it was good. I came in at the end of the heyday, and it was still to
was
me
still
it was
pretty good.
really
Yeah, I
good.
bet.
It
It
was
was
still
damn
pretty good, but like it was probably 3 years later. It was like one winter. They had one winter. It was the wolves and the snow that year, and it was just went from pretty good deer hunting to like absolutely nothing
Yeah.
in one season. So
That's a bummer.
yeah, it was like 2 seasons after that or something like that. But man, does that one haunt me? I just like I said,
It
Haunts me just hearing
What,
it.
what if he was wide, but then he had like 8-inch flyers off
Yeah.
of his tubes?
Like that electric buck in there.
you want to
that-
know what's funny?
Yeah.
The following year, I went back into that place. Obviously, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I went there just to be like, dude, I know he's there. I mean, I still dream of him. I went back there the following year. We never got any snow, but I found a really nice swale swamp that was really close to that, and I killed he had 13 points, arguably 14. He had big stickers like daggers off his bases. His beams are like 27 inches. But they come straight
Whoa.
out. One of those bucks that like can't even feed off the ground. With the end of his beams are all like nubbed
Rounded
off
off?
because when he
No
fed.
kidding.
Oh yeah,
That's like
And-
Travis's buck right there. He's that.
Dude,
the
they're out-
Drop is all knobbed off.
They're out
Yeah.
past the tip of his nose. I'll bet you his beams are out probably 2 inches past
Wow.
the tip of his nose.
Wow.
And I can't help but think, and I mean, it's a beautiful deer, but it was not an old deer. I cannot help but think that was that buck's son.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh,
real,
wow.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? It was just, like I said, this buck was younger. If you ever let him get to 6, 7, 8.5 years old,
And you're sure he was a younger deer?
the one I killed, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was younger, no doubt about it. But I saw his rack, and I was like, I was,
No doubter, yeah.
oh, yeah.
No
But-
kidding, yeah, because it would have been, if you weren't positive it was a younger deer, and who knows, maybe that could have been the big wide one you chased.
Yeah.
Because they do go downhill at a certain age, but
Wow.
if you're sure, then you're sure. But
This is random, but last fall in Massachusetts, I found a swamp, and you can see trails going into it, but you find one trail that has cattails folded over
Yep.
from deer's rat going through.
Yes.
Then you
Yep.
find cattails on the dry land from them carrying them in their antlers
Yep.
and falling out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Seen that.
Yeah,
Dan
pretty exciting.
Infalt talks
Yep,
about that a lot.
exactly.
Dan
Yeah.
Infalt
Yeah.
talks about the
That
wide.
gets my blood pumping.
It does, yeah.
You know what's funny? So Dan Infalt, I've gotten into watching him. So pre-tracking career, Timmy Bolduc, dude, I was Dan Infalt.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
been hunting like Dan. It's like
In the
I,
swamps and stuff?
Oh man, I
Yeah.
am to this day. I am a swamp rat. But it's so funny. Like I got turned on to him.
Yeah.
And like it is crazy how similar.
That's
I
cool.
my entire career outside of tracking
Yep.
for deer hunting has been just like Dan Infalt.
That's really cool.
I don't have any of that up by me.
No, neither do I. And I was
No.
just going to say, the area that you live in,
Yep.
I'm assuming, must have a lot of the same habitat that he has in Wisconsin.
Swamp.
So it's pretty
Swamp and
relatable
oak, right?
on how they
Yep.
bed out in the swamps.
Swamp and oak, yeah.
Swamp and oak.
Yep. So what happened was once I did enough time, like I wanted to be a big buck hunter. I didn't want just deer. I wanted a big buck.
Yeah.
Well, I figured out that deer and big bucks are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
does and small bucks are one thing. They live one life, but a big buck he lives a completely different life. It's completely
Yeah, they're
different.
different animals.
They're completely different animals. I know they're the same thing, but they're not. They live
Right.
different lives. And that's what happened is I did it enough and I figured out that like big bucks, guess where they survive? Swamps.
Yeah.
Right?
In those places people aren't.
Yep.
Yep.
And they're hard to hunt. You're going to hear bucks sloshing through, chasing a doe at 17 yards, and you're never going to get eyes on them and can't shoot them. And
That
you
must be exciting, though.
oh,
hearing them
man,
just sitting there.
crazy.
Yeah.
But you want to know where they are? That's where they are. They're in those swamps. So like I said, Dan Infall, I started watching him. I'm like, man, this is like an
Yeah.
old version of Timmy Bolduc
Yeah,
right
He's,
here.
he's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, would you push into those swamps to scout preseason? They're like back in the spring. How are you finding these swamp spots
So-
and where you're setting up?
My tactic has definitely changed. I used to find those swamps to be like, yep, there's got to be a big buck in there, and I'd go right in the middle of that thing, and I'd crawl in there at 3:30 in the morning and get up in a tree, and I'd sit right there, and I definitely learned like that is not the way to do it, because I think what happens is you're dealing with pressured deer, and the problem with pressured deer is when they come into those swamps and stuff, they're smart enough. They come into those swamps, making sure it's safe in there, right? So in a morning, that buck isn't going to walk into that swamp. Say that is his spot. He ain't going to walk in there with the wind on his butt, right? He's just not going to do it. He's going to come into that swamp with the wind on his nose, so he can make sure there's nothing in there that's going to no predators, no whatever it is, and yeah. So anyways, now what I do is when I find a swamp that I think. What I do is I start way out here, and I'll watch that thing, and I'll just let them do their thing, even though I can't kill them. I'm sitting there with my bow, and I'm watching them for 3 straight nights out there at
What do you
110
call it?
yards.
Observation stand.
And I'll just
Yeah, right.
observe out there. And when I finally figure out how it works in this particular swamp, I'll just, one of those mornings, I'll just sneak right in there and surprise them, because there's another
That's
thing,
a good
too.
little tip.
All the big bucks, I've never shot them out of stands that I have hanging and I hunt consistently.
It's the first thing, yeah.
It's the very first time I sit there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I do now, because the problem is I think swamps, let's just call it a 200-acre swamp. That big buck it probably is not right in the middle of that swamp.
No.
That he's over here tucked in this little tiny corner. It's all swale grass, but there's one little tiny shrub that's 6 feet tall. Well, as soon as I see that shrub, I know there's a high enough piece of land for that thing to grow on. See what I mean? But that might be tucked way over here with 30 acres of swale around him, but it's way at the end of this swamp, right? So I've learned, and when you figure that stuff out, you can figure out that bucks use swamps in a certain way. It's going to determine about how that swamp's laid out and what it's all about, but he's going to use it in this certain way. It's not just in the middle where I used to go. I don't go just in the middle anymore. But where do you go? It might be that tree in that little hummock I'm talking about, but you're better off to stay the heck out of there with the wind in your face and let him do him. Get eyes on him, figure him out, and then go make your move.
I know Dan Infall does he's not a big fan of morning hunts. Are you? Is that what
I
you're doing?
do.
You're going in morning?
But because they go into those places the way they do, it's really hard to go get into them. Because, like I said, if you're out in there, he's going to come in a way that he has a really good chance of catching you. Evenings are definitely better.
So it could be wind dependent in the morning on where he's entering and whatnot. Yeah.
But again, a lot of times I end up, it's very seldom anymore that I'm out in the middle of this giant swamp. Most of the time I'm tucked to one end over in here. But in the morning, I might be able to get that right where I know he's coming in like through this way. Well, I'll just get the wind right and get over here and set this morning, right?
And I feel like what you're talking about right now is very September time frame, like what you're talking about, right?
No, it's
No?
right during
Right through the whole-
right through.
Okay.
Because in where I live, and this is where I think a transition happens. These are pressured deer. When you get in the mountains of Maine, those bucks aren't pressured. I think those are two different. It's almost like a buck and a doe. They're two different things. Pressured deer and mountain deer are two different things.
So the pressured deer, they're going to act more like
it's security.
yeah, they're going to act more like a big woods buck would act in the summer, even through the rut.
I just think
Is that what
that
you're saying?
when he feels pressure, he has to be in a place that he can survive.
Right.
Where is that?
Right.
It's in the place where probably nobody goes, which is either right behind somebody's house
Right, yeah.
in a tiny little thicket,
We see that
right?
a lot,
That's
yeah.
20 yards off of their back lawn, or it's in that swamp that most hunters won't go in. So I have to, obviously, I ain't hunting 20 yards behind somebody's house, but those bucks and what they do, this is what they do, and I've watched them do it. They herd those does into their spot is what they do. They'll spend all night. They'll go get those does, and they'll just herd them right in there, and that's his area where I'm surviving, and
He's safe.
I'm safe. He just drives
keeping
them
her
in
in
there.
there.
Oh yeah, he'll put them right in there with her, with him, and he'll spend his day. And the crazy part is like pre all this, I used to think those big bucks were really nocturnal, like those pressured bucks in areas that are getting hunted heavy. They were really nocturnal. They're actually not. If you can find that spot that I'm talking about in that swamp where he's super secure, if you can find it without him knowing you're there, you watch that spot, those bucks get on their feet at 11 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock on their feet, 40 minutes before it gets dark. I mean, it's crazy. They do not, I thought they laid from dark to dark.
No.
Nope.
They have to get up and feed a little
Oh,
bit, right?
man, they're on their feet. Yep,
Yeah.
they are on their feet, absolutely. But the problem is, when they're on their feet at daylight is such a acre.
It's a
Yeah.
It's
pocket.
under an acre.
Yeah.
It's
You gotta be
tiny.
right on 'em.
You got to
Postage
find
stamp,
that
yeah.
acre. If you can get that acre, dude, trust me, you'll
Yeah.
kill him in daylight. He's not unkillable. I used to think they were unkillable, and they're not. It's just you got to find that acre in the 200.
Right. I like that idea of sitting back and watching that swamp for
The
a couple
whole
days
thing.
to,
Yeah, that's
to
cool.
kind of get a gauge on where they're funneling through more than certain spots.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah.
But man, it's exciting when everything's so thick around you, and like I said, there's water sloshing and ice breaking, and
Yeah, I bet.
and holy smokes,
awesome.
man, does that get me fired up?
I want to.
Calm morning, you could hear them crunching out over the ice. I bet that's pretty wild.
Oh,
I want to do more of that bow hunting. It's just up where I grew up. The bow hunting's not great. It's big woods, low deer densities, and I've been venturing south some to kind
Yeah.
of get into that because I've always loved bow hunting. It's just I need to get some more of that experience. A lot of my bow hunting has to do with the rut.
yep.
So like a lot of my real good, like I guess high probability times is like around Halloween, and I'm doing the community scrape thing.
Yep.
But that's like the only effective way I feel like, unless you can find them the little postage stamp like you're talking about. But in the big woods, I feel like a lot of times it's so random they just bed in a different
is.
spot all the
Yeah.
time.
Those
Yeah.
are different.
They are.
They just lay wherever they want.
And it's funny, where I am in Rutland County, I feel like there are some deer that act kind of like you're talking.
Yep.
I just have to get more into it. It's
They have more of a core area.
they have more of a core. I feel like
Sure.
there's more farm type country and swampy type country, but still I've always kind of leaned towards the rut hunting. Like, oh, this is a good funnel, I'm going to catch one cruising. I feel like the way you're talking is definitely, it's a different way of thinking about hunting.
Yeah.
Because I never really think about, okay, where is he bedding? I'm thinking about where can I catch him Halloween.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is totally different.
Yeah.
But I feel like the way you're doing it, it opens up your season a lot more.
Well, the problem is in my opinion, you should think about where he's bedding, because if he's not going to just be walking everywhere in daylight, he's only going to be in this acre in daylight. You have to get as close to that as you can. Well, that's his bedroom, right? He's not going to be 4 miles away from where he wants to be at mid-afternoon, right? He's just not going to cover that ground. He'll
But
be
it's
on
a
his
really
feet, but
nice
he ain't,
funnel.
he ain't going anywhere.
Right? Yeah. Now, when you find their bedroom, or what you consider a buck's bedroom, what kind of sign are you finding, or are you jumping the buck out of it and you see him run, or like how do you determine?
A lot of it, to be really straight with you, is going to be sit back observation.
And observe it.
Yep.
Yeah, because I've like torn apart swamps, and like there's never a spot, it's like you might blow some out of here or there, but it's never like, okay, there's 36 rubs in this little patch of alder or something. It's
Right.
never
It's the bed. It's
not like that.
Not
But I
much.
feel like what you're saying, it's more subtle than you would think it would be.
Yeah.
That's why the observation sit's probably so dangerous.
And
Because
I want to be clear too. I don't think it's always the bed. I'm definitely not saying that.
but it's one of his.
bedding area kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
That
one
makes
of
sense.
his. Yeah, exactly. But the sign, like he'll leave his sign around. The best way. This is like the best thing. Let's go back to early season, like bow season. So I used to think that like those bucks weren't in swamps. That like September 15th is when New Hampshire bow season.
Yep.
I have to tell you, 2 years ago, I shot a really nice big 10-pointer.
I remember.
Right?
I remember,
Dude came walking right out of that swamp.
It's giant, like 140 something.
Yep.
inch
That
buck,
was
right?
2 bucks though that you shoot in that same swamp, right?
Dude, I've shot 4 bucks out of a cluster of trees underneath this tent right
No
here.
kidding.
All right there.
Yeah.
That buck though. But there's a swamp. So this swamp is 150 acres big, but it's way back at the very beginning, tucked way over here, right next to a road.
Yeah.
But the texture in this little pocket right here was exactly what he needed out, and the rest of that was good, but it wasn't the stuff that he wanted. That buck stayed way over here, and I was sitting right where the oaks were, so I was only from here to that road, which is, call it 15 yards off the edge of the swamp. He came walking out of that swamp to go. He was ready to feed, and there was his acorns. I was sitting right at his acorns, but I was within, I'll bet you I was within 75 yards of him when I climbed that tree.
Yeah.
He was just laying right in there.
Like a cluster of trees in that swamp. Or
He was in
something
that
you said
swamp,
it.
yep, and that's what I love to look for. I love to look at a swamp and just see a cluster of trees that got tall. The reason they got tall is because
it's dry. Yeah.
it's dry enough where they could do that. If it was underwater all the time, then it wouldn't grow there.
You
right?
need to get in the saddle.
That's what I keep telling him.
I'm telling you right now.
You want to know what I got? Can I tell you what I got?
Yeah,
I'm
what do you
embarrassed because I'm such a buck tracker that I feel
that's
weird
cool.
talking
No.
about this other side of me.
Hey, no, we're bow hunters too, so
Yeah.
it's cool. Yeah.
I just bought Dan Infalt's stand.
Did you?
That
Did you
beast
really?
stand.
That is
I bet it's
cool.
awesome.
Dude, it came in Tuesday. This Tuesday. I ordered it in May, and I just got it on Tuesday. And oh my word, is that thing awesome!
6
I
pounds, right?
Dude,
6 pounds.
7.
7
Now, what do you
pounds.
have for sticks? Did you get the bee sticks? too?
Nope.
Okay.
I bought the
Get the one.
Shakar.
Oh, okay.
It's actually SK1 AR Shakar, but they're the lightest ones.
Sure.
I got 2 of those because I'm a wicked pussy. Sorry, I should. I can't get high in a tree, dude. I
Oh,
had
yeah, I've
I
heard
had like
that, yeah.
10 feet off the ground. Like
I
I'm
heard it on a
terrible.
podcast. You
Yeah.
said that, but you know what? You're getting better angles.
Yeah.
You really are at 10 feet.
So I got 2 sticks with aiders, like 2-step aiders on each one,
Yep.
and then that stand, and it gets me like, say, I don't know, 11, 12 feet-ish right
Yeah.
in there,
Yep.
but it's perfect for me. That big one that I shot, that big 10-pointer, again, I can't get high in a tree. I panic, dude, and I freeze. I'm just terrible. I swear to God, my platform was not, my platform, I bet you was... It was not 9 feet off the ground. Like you could almost
kidding.
walk up in a good jump and reach up and touch it.
That's cool.
That buck, when he came walking out of the swamp, when I shot him, that buck was one big step away from the tree that I was in. So 9 feet and go one step away. I swear
he's,
to
like,
you,
right under you.
dude. I swear to God, I did not shoot that buck any further from here to that one right there.
Top pin.
Yeah.
Your heart must
Top
have been,
pin.
your heart must
That's
have been
exciting.
pounding.
Oh man,
Your whole sight house is just on the deer at that point.
It was so close. It was just
Yeah.
so close. It was
That's
so.
so
I
sick.
saw it. If I had hung my bow and just stepped off my platform and dropped down, I would have landed right on his back.
Yeah, get him with a knife.
Yeah,
That is so
crazy.
I like hearing these stories because you're like very well rounded. You track bucks,
Yeah.
you sit, you still
Yeah.
hunt, you do it all.
I
So,
love it all,
yeah.
and you know,
Yeah.
and I've created this image of myself as a buck tracker. But I'm not going to lie to you. I love bow hunting
Yeah.
and hunting swamps. I love it. Do
Yeah.
I want to be known for it? I'm not so sure, but man, do I love
Good
it.
thing you can do both. You can bow hunt
Yeah, you
early
can do
season,
both.
and then you can
Both.
go
And
tracking
that's
in
the-
November.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
love
that
them both.
We do. We're always out there September 15th,
Yeah.
and we're trying it over. And I've only killed 4 or 5 deer with my bow, but I'm working at it.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to do it in the big woods, but Connor killed that one right there.
Yep, that was
That's-
a New Hampshire bow kill in
Is it?
2020.
That's,
Yep.
But that's a big woods
Really?
bow kill
Nice.
on a scrape.
Yep,
and
it was on the
that's
edge of
my
a cut.
dream.
Big scrape, like 100 yards from the edge of a cut. He
Nice.
came out like October 30th, 5:30 in the evening.
Wait,
Yeah.
205
Yeah.
is good
Awesome.
buck. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Bow hunting's great. I'll
Yeah.
tell you that tracking's really difficult. All of this is really difficult, but
Oh yeah.
it is arguable that it is almost the most difficult. Bow hunting, to get an arrow into a great big buck.
It is,
like,
for sure.
Everything has to go so right.
Yep.
I know you guys do it. I'm sure you got a million stories of
yeah.
dude, the wind swirled and like he was 20 yards away and I was just about to shoot him and right. Everything has to go so perfectly to get that right, and it's the pinnacle. It really is the pinnacle of
Right.
killing a big buck.
And tracking bucks can lead you to killing a buck with a bow because they
Oh,
bring
yeah.
you to these spots
Oh, yeah.
constantly. It seems like
Oh, yeah.
that they're always going through.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the reason why we love it so much in the big woods is because it's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep.
That's
exactly right.
Yeah, if you tried to bow hunt the big woods, you could go your whole life without shooting a couple couple bucks maybe.
Yeah.
It's just there's something about them. It's just more randomness and everything. But
Yeah.
This is random, but Woodman Arms has a team now, don't they?
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your guys' plan for this season?
So, so we put a group of guys together. Mark Woodman had said to me way back in the very beginning of this thing, and he said, I always dreamed that one day Woodman Arms would be big enough that I could have a group of guys that be like a team for Woodman Arms, like a kind of a pro staff sort of thing. And I was like, I always remembered he told me that, and of course I was on Big Woods and stuff. And anyways, life goes on, and I got done with Big Woods, and everything was good. And I want to be clear about that. There's no hard feelings, nothing. It was just my time, whatever. And anyways, like a month or two went by, and I kind of was, I don't know if the word's discouraged, but I felt myself going into a different place in my life, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be so involved. And I was like, man, maybe I should just go sneak away and do my thing and just whatever.
Fly under the radar.
Yeah, fly
just
under
don't
the
say
radar.
anything.
Don't even say anything, whatever. But the truth is like you could tell, I'm a people person.
Yeah,
I like this. I love all this stuff. So anyways, I sat on it for a little bit, and anyways, I don't know. One day I was like, maybe we should do that. And I went and saw him, and I was like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, oh, I'd love that. So I was like, all right. So I started pondering around. Then I started putting my feelers out to some people, and and like you guys are all really good deer hunters. Big Woods Bucks, those guys are really good deer hunters. But there's a group of guys that were not involved with really anybody, right? Whether
They're
it
all
was
great hunters.
Yeah, and I mean these guys, like I have a lot of respect for these guys. So, anyways, I just kind of started putting some feelers out, and it started with Glenn, Nick Campagna.
I had the same thing with Timmy. No hard feelings, anything. It was just that point. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't fitting. And then I had already made the decision, and then Timmy brought that up to me, and I'm like, whoa, wow,
Yeah.
that could
So,
be
anyways,
done.
I started
So we
putting feelers out to some really good guys that I respected that would be good fits. That was another thing too. Like I've always said this, like I look at a lot of the greats, Larry Benoit, Lanny Benoit, Hal Blood, Joe Donito. You know what? You can be the best backtracker in the world, but if you're an asshole, you know what I mean? Like Lanny Benoit is not only the best, but he is a really good guy. Like he's great. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a thing you got to have both in a way, And these guys, like I not only wanted, really good, good deer hunters, but also they had to fit that mold of like you're
Good
just
guy,
good to be around. You're fun. You're all the things. So anyways, Steve Champa, Jeremy Ballantyne, Lucas Benoit, like I started going through the list, and I reached out to all these guys.
Oh,
and yeah, these guys are good deer hunters. And I was a little humbled, I'm going to be honest, because I still don't look at myself as anything. But the fact that these guys, like, believed in me enough, like, that meant a lot to me. And these guys were like, every one of them was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So little time went by, and we started getting guys that were committing and stuff, and we've built this thing now, and we haven't even started anything. We haven't like made a video, we haven't done a single thing, but we've just been in the process of like getting the people lined up, and like right now we're trying to come up with a name. Like I don't even know what I want to call it. You know what I
and
mean?
you're gonna start a
got a
YouTube
nice,
channel,
well-rounded
though?
group.
Yeah, and
That's
what we're
cool.
going to do, like, ultimately what it's going to be is just we're going to start a YouTube channel, and I'm going to send hopefully Steve Champa will go out with a camera or a cameraman and get some footage, and we're just going to share it with people. I'm not trying to make any money. I haven't set any bars. I ain't going to be like, hey, we're going to put a video a month, so you guys, it's not anything like that. It's just going to be when we get some cool shit, we're just going to share it with you guys, and hopefully
people can learn from it all,
and
too.
that's it. That's
and
all.
inspire. I think the biggest thing is the inspiration that people get out of it. Because I look back when I was younger, watching the hunting public videos and watching these guys bow hunt on the ground, and I loved to try to do that, but I thought I was doing it wrong. Because I watch all the TV shows and everybody's in the tree stands and everybody's doing this and that, and then I see these guys on the ground and I'm like, this can be done.
Yeah,
the way I like to hunt is actually, it can be done or whatever. It just inspired me to go out and push and try things. And
Mark, when I approached him about this and said, "What do you think? Like, do you think we should do this?" And he said, "Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, I definitely think you should do that." And he said, he watches the hunt in public, and he said, "I always like that." He's like, "Those are just a bunch of good guys.
Yeah, they are.
That are just out hunting. They ain't wearing the fanciest stuff. They're just doing their thing, but they are." So I watched them, but after Mark told me, like, that's what I always had in my head. was like the Hunt in Public kind of
Yep.
style.
Yep.
I went off and started watching the Hunt in Public. Dude, I've been watching the Hunt in Public for
Oh, yeah.
6 months now.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it.
Well, it's
So,
relatable to people.
It is.
super relatable.
Yeah, they're
And
just
like-
regular guys.
Yep,
Yep.
exactly.
Well,
Those-
I'll tell you one thing. Just with this group on this weekend, my stomach hurts from laughing so loud.
Yeah, I know,
Oh
right?
my god!
Last night it was funny. We were up at our tent, right? And these guys are, I'm getting old now. So 10 o'clock comes and I'm going to bed. And I was laying in there on my cot, and because I'm in a tent, and these guys are right out the door, and Lucas and Nick and everybody, they're half in it, and they're drinking and all that. And I just sat there, and I laughed. I burst out loud laughing, like probably 3 or 4 times. And then I was sitting there, and this smile came over my face, and I was like, man, Timmy, like you have picked the right, like right there was like that moment for me where I was like, dude, you picked like the right people because I could see it, and I was watching these guys and listening to them and the way they're blending and meshing and stuff, and I'm like, you got the right people.
Right.
You got the right people.
Yeah, we
So,
also have one other, Lanny Benoit.
Lanny Benoit.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
our
The legend.
wild card.
Yeah.
So anyways, I talked to Lanny and I was like, listen, man, and I told him, I was like, dude, you don't got to do this, but this is what we're doing. And he's always loved Mark Woodman and the Woodman Arms and stuff. And I was like, dude, I anxiety about him being like, no, I ain't doing anything like that, and I ran it by him and he looked right at me and he was like, that sounds great. Let's do, I'd love to. I love you guys. And
That's super cool.
so Lanny Benoit is on there with us, and we're going to just all have some fun.
Yeah.
And what we do, we do. If we
Right.
don't get it done, we don't.
Right. It's
No
loose,
pressure. Because that's the other thing I didn't want to do. I did not want to, again, set a bar and then have to meet expectation.
Yeah.
I'd rather let's just do this, have some fun.
Do your
we'll,
thing.
We'll
Yep.
put it out to people, and if they
Right.
like it, great. Who knows? Maybe 2 years from now, it'll be like, yeah, everybody hated us. I don't know.
No,
We'll
I
see.
don't think that's
No.
going to be the case. I'm
Or we
really
couldn't
looking.
put enough footage out there.
No, I think with the guys you have, you're going to be just fine on
Yeah.
the footage
I hope
department.
so.
Yeah,
I
It's
hope so.
well
I
rounded.
think-
You guys get guys from
Yeah.
southern New Hampshire. You guys
And
get
you have-
guys in
Yep.
central New Hampshire, whatever.
Jason Alex is
Yep.
doing a lot of the producing stuff. He does really good work. So I think I'm really looking forward to
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
what
I'm
you guys,
excited.
because I think that's key too.
Yeah.
Having a guy that's good at the editing,
Yep.
good at that side of things.
Jeremy Ballantyne is
Yeah, that's him too.
fantastic at. Thank you.
Thank you.
He's fantastic at editing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
he
Like
is. Yeah.
Jeremy, I came recommended. Actually, it was kind of funny. I didn't know Jeremy at all because I'm not on social media and I'm just in
Right.
Timmy's little world. But Jeremy came recommended by 2 people that I had asked. One of them was Jason Alex, and the other one was Neil. And then the third, actually 3 people, Steve Champer.
No kidding.
Steve Champa, or Nick rather.
Yep.
And they're like, dude, you got to get this guy. And called him up. I'd never spoke to him in my life. Actually, I did over muzzleloaders, but I didn't know him at all. But
He's
Yeah.
very well rounded.
Yep.
incredibly well.
Tracker and a
Yep.
wicked bow hunter. And,
Now I'm getting to know him. That dude is solid too.
Oh,
Like just a
yeah.
solid, good dude.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that's what I wanted. I just wanted good guys that and that's
See,
what
it's-
it's turning into.
There's not a lot of guys that like you and him that could, like he'll go down to the Pine Barrens and kill a giant with his bow, and then he'll go track a buck on a mountain somewhere.
Yep.
It's usually you're one or the other.
Right.
Very, very seldomly is there guys that do it both.
Yep. So I'm hoping it's just going to be we're going to do this thing together and have a bunch of fun, and
Yep.
hopefully people like watching it. And
Oh, yeah,
you
they
never
will.
know. You
They
know?
will.
I know
We'll
I'm ready
see.
to watch some of it.
Oh
so
yeah,
it'll be
me too,
exciting.
man.
Yep.
Well, this has been great. Thank you guys
Yeah.
for
Hey,
taking up a bunch
Appreciate
of
you
your time.
guys having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a really, really good episode. We're probably gonna wait till the fall to drop this one because I think this was a really good one. This would be a good
People
like
fired
Halloween
up.
time.
Can I put
Yeah,
one last
nice.
thing in?
Yeah, of course.
So we're here at Huntstock, and we're again trying to figure out a name for the Woodman Arms new Woodman Arms thing we're doing. Right now, we have a little bucket. People are putting suggestions in there for names for our thing. If we pick a name this weekend, I have a 50 cal muzzleloader that I built, and I'm going to give it to the person that thinks of the name that we all fall in love with and end up using.
Yep.
If this
That's
doesn't happen, and we don't end up with a name this weekend, anybody listening to this,
Yep.
when it comes out, if you have any cool suggestions, if we don't have a name, I'd love to hear it. And we're just trying to come up with something cool. And so
Something
Heck
catchy.
yeah.
And
something
it's not,
catchy.
It's not going to be Team Ramrod.
Not Team Ramrod.
Throwing that out there.
Yeah, that was one of the suggestions yesterday.
Oh.
Team Ramrod.
I actually like that.
That's a good one.
I've been thinking about it a little bit. I'm trying to like play on words with Woodman, but it's kind of hard.
It is.
It's a little bit difficult.
It's a little difficult.
Yeah.
You might have to do something funky there. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah,
I
thank you
appreciate
guys.
it. This has been a
Appreciate it.
great
It's a good one.
episode. And we'll stay in touch.
Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
All right, boys.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you on the next one. Bye.